right. Sure. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Elluminate's briefing on Israel from two of our Israeli women leaders. Our world has changed on October 7th with the surprise massacre of Israelis by Hamas. Who would have believed over 110 days later we would still be calling on the international community to recognize the sexual crimes and human rights violations regarding rape as a weapon of war? That we would be calling on the release of more than 130 hostages still being held in captivity, and that Israel is under attack with a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This past weekend, I had the privilege to attend a meeting at the home of Rachel Foster to meet with the hostage mothers and sisters, and one mother who saw her daughter murdered in front of her eyes on video. How can one live through this fear and horror? I shared with them that Elluminate and the Jewish women around the world have come together to call on the UN and the U.S. Congress to condemn this gender-based violence and to bring our hostages home. That we think about them and that we send them love every day, and we will not rest until their safe return. They were so moved because they didn't know about our efforts, and this underscored for me that we need to do more and that we as women have power and influence, and this is our moment to hold the world accountable. Elluminate is a network of Jewish women leaders for equity and justice. Part of what we do is bring us all together to tackle emergent issues. We've also created a missing but much needed space in the Jewish community for Jewish women leaders. The collective, our signature program, was created to support and build a network of strong, bold female leaders. We currently have 50 Jewish entrepreneurial women, executive leaders, participating in our leadership advancement program, and 25% of them are Israeli women. We have most recently launched our Hanani Israel initiative to support them and their priorities during this critical moment. There's information on this initiative on your sheets. It is the Illuminate Israel Emergency Campaign. We are very, very proud of these women who are on the front lines, and two of our Israeli collective members are with us today to brief us from a women's lens on what is happening in Israel. Arit Sulitzianu, how did I do?
Great.
Okay. Executive Director of the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel, is an international voice on the impact of gender-based violence on women in Israel. And Donna Talmy is the CEO of Yahal, the Israel Service Learning, which has been working to support civil society and our soldiers. I'm amazed by these bold and courageous women and proud that they are part of Illuminate and that I get to work so closely with them. I'm now going to turn the mic over to another amazing, wonderful, bold, courageous woman, our president, Stephanie Gary.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. Clearly, this is a testament to not only who you are, but what's happening in this moment. Not a day goes by that we are not thinking of you, worrying about you, concerned with the work that you're doing. So let's begin by sharing a couple of minutes from each of you. Talk about your organization, because I bet there are some people here who may not know about the tremendous work that you're doing. Talk about your organization and, if you will, how you came to your work initially. I want you to use that mic so everybody can hear you, because I believe we have some people on Zoom as well, so that way they can hear you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming here in this cold night, New York night. In Israel, the weather was better when we left, but now it's raining. So I work already over a decade as the executive director of the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel. This organization is already 33 years old and was actually established by local rape crisis centers who are dispersed all over Israel. These organizations are all embedded in their communities, and they established us 33 years ago because they wanted a voice that will speak for victims of sexual violence in the macro level, to promote policies, initiate laws, do awareness raising, and they thought it's not efficient that each center will do that alone. It's a little bit like similar, a little bit like RAIN, but we work very close together. And one of our strengths is if I go to the Knesset, I say I represent all of the country, all of the rape crisis centers in the country, all of the more than 50,000 telephone calls we get every year. So when we talk with a parliament member, with a Knesset member, they know that behind us there are a lot of survivors, and it's power. The power comes from the survivors. And so this is what we do. You want to, how do I go?
Yes, how you came to the
Okay.
work as well.
So, okay, I think everything has to do with our parents and the history.
Yes, of course.
So I will say, first of all, that actually, when I studied Chinese studies in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
And studied Chinese, and I lived in Taiwan, and I knew very good Chinese in these days. One of the things that it led me to be a feminist, because I studied a lot about the Chinese women who their legs were, bound. Okay, and afterwards that sort of opened my eyes, and that's how I found my way, after doing a master's degree in communication, to find my way to work in the Israel Women's Network, which was established by Professor Alice Shalvi, and at least some of you know who she was, and I worked with her. But I think the origin for that is history, and as I told you when we talked alone, I myself, as a second generation to a Holocaust survivor, and I lived with a mother who was born in Krakow and was in Auschwitz, and that's how I grew up. And I lived in a house where we never talked about that. My mother never said anything about her history. She shut her mouth, but me and my sister both have felt the trauma of a Holocaust survivor. She was between the age of 10 till the age of 16 in the Holocaust. That's a very sensitive age. Mm-hmm. She survived. She married my father. They had a good life, and had me and my sister. That, by the way, is a therapist, and she works in a hospital, mental health hospital, that has a special ward for sexual violence survivors. So both of us, in some interesting way, got to this issue. And I think both of us were living with a traumatic mother. That's what it was. In this time, Holocaust survivors never got help, never got anything, because it was back then. They never talked about it. I think to see that and to feel this thing made me want to influence. I just grew with it, and I felt that my mission is to help women. I knew it from a young age. I was a feminist from a very young age, even without knowing that, because by the way, my father was my mother's teacher in the university. So that's also that's another. This is my story in a nutshell. I don't want to take more time.
No,
but, yeah.
Thank you. It informs for sure the conversation, right? Donna, to you, just talk about that one works too. You can each have your own. Okay. All right. Whatever. You got it? Yeah. If you would talk about your organization and, of course, how you came to the work.
Sure. But I'm going to do something else before.
Okay. You can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you everyone for coming. It's really a pleasure to be here, and for Elluminate to having us here. Today was a really hard day in Israel. The last 3 months have been really hard in Israel. And I actually want to ask all of us here for a second, before I delve into talking, just to close our eyes. If you want to play along, you don't have to, but if you want to, close your eyes for just a moment. Acknowledging that there's a lot of heaviness going on right now. There's a lot of heaviness today. There's been a lot of heaviness for the last 3 months. There's also a lot of hope, and there's a lot of resilience. And I guess when I was thinking about this gathering, I wanted us to kind of make space, both for that heaviness and the sadness, but also for the hope and the resilience, because if we're all going to leave this room very depressed, it's not going to help us much. So maybe let's just take one breath and kind of make room for both of those things in our bodies. So now I can introduce myself. So my name is Dana, and I'm the founder of an organization called Yahel. I started Yahel 14 years ago, and what we do is that we bring young people from all over the world to Israel to do service and social action programs. I'm a big believer in volunteering. I find that any kind of giving, really, something very profound about it. And I think that volunteering and giving of your time is a wonderful way to engage. I'm also very passionate about the relationship between the Jewish community and all over the world, really, in Israel, and particularly the young generation. I find that it's not as easy as it maybe used to be in terms of connecting people as well. So those are kind of my two passions. And for the last 14 years, we've brought hundreds of people to Israel. Some of them are sitting here. Some of our alumni from New York. So yes, and to your question, how do I got to this? So I grew up in Israel, but also not in Israel. Grew up in Europe, actually. And I think I've kind of been on that between, like what is it like to be an Israeli, but also not an Israeli. I won't tell you the whole story, but when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I actually lived in the States. Not as exotic as Taiwan, but in North Carolina, almost as exotic. And I worked for an organization called American Jewish World Service. I worked with Ruth Messenger, who's very connected to Elluminate, and it was a real honor. And I started working with them in running these kinds of programs, service learning programs. At the time, it was to Honduras. And I was an educator, and I took these young students to do work, and I fell in love with this educational methodology. More than anything, it's an educational methodology, and I felt that if you do it right, and you really expose young people to challenges and to complex realities, but also give them the tools to do something about it, it's very, very empowering. I never thought I would start a nonprofit. It was not on my to-do list, but when we came back to Israel, two major things happened. One was that people who knew me from the U.S. started asking me, can you do similar things in Israel? You come in Israel and not, just kind of pick lemons for 2 hours, which is great, by the way, very needed right now, but can you come and do kind of more in-depth community-based work? And I realized that there was a little bit of that at the time, but not a whole lot. Second thing I realized, and this is, 15 years ago, I had a lot of alumni from my AJWS programs, and they were young, progressive Jews, and many of them wouldn't touch Israel with a 10-foot pole. And that, for me, as a liberal Israeli, was very worrying. I didn't need them to make aliyah, but I wanted them to be in conversation with Israel. So that kind of led me to start this organization with the goal of helping local communities in Israel, connecting people to Israel, but through a very complex lens, and hopefully also creating young leadership that has the skills and the inspiration to be change makers.
Beautiful. When you think about, 14 years, over 30 years, these women have been leading and have been inspiring people for decades, and together, the difference you've made is very meaningful, and we thank you for that. October 7th. We all think about that day. Ori, let me start with you. You have been a leading international voice on raising awareness about gender-based sexual crimes, and especially now since October 7th, your voice has been louder and more pronounced, and you have called on the international community to condemn these crimes. You're working within Israel to understand the trauma. We talked about trauma earlier, but you continue that theme, and you talk about how it's inflicted the country. So share with us, if you would, the work you're doing since October 7th, how it really has defined what you're doing today versus before.
7 minutes or something like that, right?
Sure.
So it's fine. Okay, first, just to get to how it happened, each one of us, like you always ask Americans, where have you been on 9/11? Okay, same here. 7th of October, 6:30 in the morning. I have a jogging group, a Saturday morning jogging group. We were supposed to meet at 7 o'clock in somewhere. We hear the missiles in Tel Aviv, where I live. So we start sending WhatsApp messages. No, we're not going to run today. This is very awkward. Maybe a half an hour later or so, I meet my neighbor, and he says, it's very strange. I saw on television a tender of a terrorist in Shiderot. And I thought, what is he talking about? An hour later, my daughter is in the army. She's in the intelligence unit in Tel Aviv, and they know everything before other people. She was at home, though. I'm sending a message to my staff, and then I'm telling my staff, my daughter said that someone told her from the intelligence unit that a soldier was kidnapped. That was 8:30 in the morning, and the rest is history. Meaning, 2 days afterwards, we already got information in the Association of Rape Crisis Centers that there was sexual violence. There were a lot of rumors going on. And then on the 10th or 11th of October, because we had concrete information, not social media. Social media is a big because we had concrete, verified information about more than 10 about a dozen different stories, not of direct victims, no, but stories that were from first responders or therapists or doctors that meant that this information is concrete. We decided to write a letter to the Red Cross saying, we want to meet you. We've got this information. We're very scared about the hostages that were there. That was 11th of October. We met the Red Cross a week or so later. We gave them all the concrete information we got. We were very naive. Now we know that something will change. We thought the Red Cross has more power than it has. That's what we thought. And about everybody who lived in Israel in the first 2 weeks, like the country was in a big house. Shock. It was horrible. Everything. Nobody almost worked, and so after these 2 weeks, we started to get this. More and more information came out. The international media started to calling, especially us. I got telephone calls from all over the world, and I just told Tanya, my roommate here in my hotel roommate here in now, and the head of community relations from the association, that I became very popular in the South Africa Jewish radio that keeps on calling me all the time, and it's very good. But all over the world, they wanted an explanation. They called us, we want a victim. You're the head of the association. Give me a story. It's very important. All the world should know what happened. Give me a story. We want a story. I got from all over the world, really. Wow. And but first of all, I was a spokesperson of the Hebrew University for many years, and I know very well how to deal with the media, and I know what they want, and I know what is a story. And my story was to explain what is a story, why can't you have one story, but you can have another story. I first of all explained to them what is sexual trauma, and this thought that a victim of a gang rape, can say, hello, my name is XYZ, and I was gang raped by Hamas, is not possible. No one will tell this kind of story. Second, people who are sexually assaulted, takes them a long time, women and men, to talk about it. They are embarrassed. Maybe they feel guilty. Maybe they feel ashamed. Maybe they can't deal with that. It's not Me Too. It's no, hello, my name is, I don't know what, and I was sexually abused or sexually harassed by Harvey Weinstein. This is not a story. There was this kind of expectation, and this is the media. They want the story. They don't see human beings. They see stories. Some are more sensitive. Others are less sensitive. So I took upon myself the role, and we're an advocacy organization for victims, not for the country of Israel, but I understood this is a different story, and I must say our country, was raped, and our country has to prove. And there's no uh, easy proof, because I won't go into details, but I will just say that because what has happened, there's no forensic evidence taken. You know, all of you read newspapers, I don't have to repeat that. The Zaka volunteers who do very important work are not forensic specialists. Also, they have they cannot take photographs. Most of them did not take any photographs. One of them did take, but there's a lot of evidence from all of the people. Yeah, first responders. Because I read every article and everything, I have all this information, and I started to build a puzzle and say, this is what we have. This is the information we have. We don't have forensic evidence, but we have, again, I don't want to talk about all the details, but so many people saw bodies, you know, of the young woman and saw what happened to them. So many people in different places. It's not one place. So there's a big puzzle. It happened in the kibbutzim. It happened in the Nova Party. It happened in about 7 different places. If you read maybe the New York Times article, it explained very well. There was afterwards last week at the Guardian, in the British Guardian article, who did quite a thorough also investigation, but not like the New York Times, who interviewed 150 people. So it took. So the first thing, I got so much media calls. You know, you have to imagine a call after a phone call, French, Portuguese, Japanese, and all of them want the same thing, and you become angry. But you know, I told myself, okay, be patient, explain to them. But when the New York Times called me, I knew that this is a game changer, because the New York Times is the most important newspaper in the world, and I really try to help them with many connections I have and information that I had, so they will get the evidence, because they have to be very accurate. And they told me that the first they told me that if they won't have the victim, according to New York Times ethics, it won't be published, the article. And I waited and I waited and I waited, no article. In the end, you read it, they got witnesses, yeah. So this work and these kind of explanations, and one of the things I try to tell the media and all the other authorities in Israel that also call us, they also call, you are waiting to get the golden piece of evidence, but you will not get it. What do you expect from a woman who suffered that? So, but I thought it's even cruel to ask it. In some way, it's cruel, you know. And, you know, one of the things we did as an organization, we decided we must learn from other countries like Ukraine, like the Balkan countries who had this horrible war in the 90s. And we already did the 2 webinars with their professionals, therapists and criminologists. What happened there? Actually, the media, it's always the same. This is the media, okay? But the media is very important, because how come all of you know everything? It's because the media. We had to go on a very delicate line, give information, but not surrender to this, give me the story. You know, we won't give this kind of stories. And one more thing, I want to tell you how complicated it is, because Israel now, inside Israel, there is an obsession to get this information. I say it's an obsession, and I will explain to you why. One therapist who works in a hospital tells me, oh, wait, you know, I want to tell you something. We got a letter from the police in Israel that we have to give any information about patients who we think have indication that they suffered from sexual violence during the massacre. I'm a professional in a hospital, yeah? I don't want to give information about my patients. It's, you know, it's their privacy. But imagine that in the beginning, the hospitals in Israel agreed to give it. Why? Because everyone wants the proof. So it's very delicate, but I believe that the truth will come out, and later on I will explain to you why. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that when the New York Times article came out, there was an enormous amount of conversation around that article, because it was really the first time we here read the documentation that you spoke of. So it's beyond imagination and unbearable to think about. So thank you. Donna, your focus on volunteerism is one of building a civil society. So if you would share with us how nonprofits, including your organization, have had to pivot during wartime, what you're doing, and what you see in terms of the landscape.
Small question.
You got, let me see, you got 5 minutes.
5
You're
minutes.
good. You're good. You're good.
So I'll start with where Olit started with October 7th. We had fellows from all over the world in Israel on October 7th, and I got a call in the morning, and they're all hysterical, and they're all scared, and rightfully so. And so for the first, I would say, couple of days, like, that was my main concern. What do we do with our fellows? Parents concerned, you know, these are really people who came from all over the world and had just started their fellowship 3 weeks before. They were in Lod, in Rishon, and in Haifa, and Rishon started having a lot of sirens and attacks, and in Lod also. So the first few days, some of them were up north, some of them came home, and we really took care of them. And then we actually decided to suspend the fellowship. A lot of people were already kind of making their way out. Some were flying out. A few creative folks actually found a cruise ship that was going to Cyprus and that. But we realized, particularly in those first few days, when it felt like we don't know where this is going, it was very hard for us to imagine that we'll be able to take care of them if it gets much worse. So we suspended our fellowship and people left the country. October 11th, actually, between those first few days, we got a lot of our alumni and community asking us, what can we do? You know, just a lot of phone calls. And on October 11th, we decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign, and just, you know, help our partners. We work with close to 100 partners around the country. And we realized that if we don't have the resource of volunteers right now, what's the other resource that we can use? We raised over 500,000 shekels, which for us was a lot of money. And so the first few weeks, what we did was, you know, help wherever we could. And our focus was on helping causes that we knew weren't getting help from other places. You know, we're not getting governmental funding. In the very beginning, it was food. It was food to soldiers. That's, by the way, in the beginning, you said that we work with soldiers. That was like we worked with soldiers for a week and a half. So usually we don't work with soldiers. The beginning was about that, about food for evacuees, food for people down south, food for unrecognized Bedouin villages, for a lot of different, and then kind of the needs evolved, and we found ourselves doing, again, like working a lot with our partners that we already know, refugees and asylum seekers. Think about if you're a refugee and you're in Sderot, the government is not going to evacuate you. So they need to evacuate themselves. And if you're part of a refugee community in Tel Aviv and all of a sudden you have less work, like you don't have Social Security. You need those basic help. So there was a lot of help like that. We found ourselves evacuating a family from Ofakim. I don't know how much you know about how the evacuation happened, but it was those towns that were closest to the border. And Ofakim was a little bit further, but Ofakim suffered. There was 54 people were killed in the town of Ofakim, most of them from one neighborhood. There's tremendous trauma there. And what the government decided was that some people were going to be evacuated, but not everyone. So the majority of the town was not evacuated. We got a call through one of our partners, a family of, just giving you a small taste, right? A family of 16 Ethiopian, pretty recent Ethiopian immigrants. And we talked to them and they said, we're not sleeping. Just get us out of this town just for a few nights. We just need a few nights of not sleeping here. Sirens, right? Trauma, they hurt. They were right on the same street. They live across from the famous Rachel, who many people know, right? The woman who fought off the terrorists with the cookies. So they're on that same street. And so we helped them out. You know, we found them a hotel and we took care of them and we found them food. So it felt very, very basic. Never done anything like that. Never on the philanthropic giving end, right? And all of a sudden we're doing all these very basic needs. We helped families from Be'eri, from Kfar Aza, from those kibbutzim. Again, it took the government a while to help, and they, they fled. They had nothing. And still you have to pay bills, and you have to pay your credit card, and you have nothing. So it was very much helping those immediate needs. What we decided is that we would give half of it very immediately, and half we are still giving out now. And there's still a lot of those immediate needs. There's also, some other things. So that was one piece that we did. Second piece that we did was volunteering, right? But we tried to figure out, what's the best way to do this, and we actually ended up working with new immigrants, which was really, really interesting. But the new immigrants being the volunteers. Usually new immigrants are on the receiving end, but we realized that one of the ways for someone to feel a sense of belonging is to volunteer and to give. But if you're a new immigrant in Israel, you go into a Hebrew WhatsApp group, you can't follow, you don't know where to go, but you want to do as well. So we started engaging new immigrants from everywhere, from former Soviet Union, from Ethiopia, from Europe, from the U.S. We had between 15 and 200 people every week doing agricultural work, doing food packaging, doing other things. It felt like it was meeting, several needs. It very much was about their need also to be part of society and give. We've now switched that into a program that we're doing, a 3-month program where we work with new immigrants, and they're kind of placed in different places. It's beyond kind of those emergency tasks. And now we've started to resume. So now we have part of our fellowship is back. In a couple of weeks, we're opening another volunteer program, a 6-week program. We're doing a program in March with the Metro West Federation, who's coming. But we're trying really to focus on thoughtful volunteering. And I'll say one more sentence about this. I'm seeing a tremendous desire from the American Jewish community to come and help in Israel, which I think is wonderful. And I think the question now is how can that be done in a thoughtful way? I think, a lot of people know about the agricultural needs. They're there for sure. For those who don't know, most of the agricultural foreign workers left. So Israel has a shortage of agricultural workers. So the need there is real. I do hope that it will be fixed soon, because this is not sustainable. A whole agricultural, piece of our economy cannot rely on any volunteers. But the needs in society are very broad, and they go far beyond this. And one of the things that I've seen in the last few months is how so many circles are affected, right? Like obviously you're talking about these really, really, really hard things. And I think that in everyday life, everyone is being touched by it, right? Like there's so many circles that are being touched. Think just about the fact that there's about 300,000 people that were called up to reserve duty, right? You have probably about another 150,000 who are in regular army, right? Close to 500,000 Israelis who are somehow involved with this. Think just about the fact that probably each one of them has at least 5 people in their immediate circle, right? You're talking about 2 million people who are stressed, not sleeping well, worried, right? So, and that's just that piece. Think about everyone who knows, it's a small country, everyone who knows someone who is fighting in Gaza, everyone who knows someone who is abducted, right? So in my organization, small organization, 12 people, the cousin of one of our workers is in Gaza right now, Carmel Gat, 39-year-old woman. She's there, right? So I'm saying that because I think, it's hard to imagine, but it is in some ways a society that is, we're talking about so many people evacuated. I don't know how many people know that from the north, just from the north, 90,000 people are evacuated, many of them in hotels. Again, we think, oh, they're in hotels, they're okay. It's really hard in those hotels. As a matter of fact, I was just talking with folks in the Haifa municipality. There's about 4,000 people were evacuated to Haifa. About 2,000 of them already started leaving the hotel. So what happens? It's whoever can leave their own place. And so what you have is people in hotels who can't There's such a mountain of needs right now that that part of what I'm thinking about is how can we as you know as volunteers and people who want to do good, how can we help other parts of this situation where it's appropriate, right? There's many places where we need professionals, but there's other places. We work a lot with youth. We work a lot with youth centers, and with children. They need attention right now. They need an adult who is not checking their phone 5 times a day and, you know, worried about their brother serving in Gaza. So there's just a lot of need. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of need.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you. I think that how you described what's happening allowed us to really feel the layers. There are so many layers to this war, to this trauma, that it's very hard to wrap your head around, let alone your heart. At Elluminate, as you know, you both know because you're beautiful examples of the work we do, we are always looking for ways to lift up women. If you would, take a couple of minutes, if you can, and speak about how you see women leaders showing up in this moment, from what you've observed in Israel, how that's looking and resonating with the community.
So I was thinking about this question, and I'll tell you the positive side of the question. And what happened now, and all of us, we work in the civil society, and you know, I studied also civil society studies, and I believe in the civil society organizations. And what you see in Israel is the civil society is holding the country, and many women work in civil society. Civil society enables more easier way to get to leadership, easier way to do things like look, you're an example. You know, you come and you establish an organization. You don't need the generals to tell you what to do. You don't need the bosses, right? You can be the boss. So many women volunteer a lot, yeah. But where is the backlash of that? Who gets the credit in the end? And all of you, for example, heard about Men in Arms, Brothers in Arms.
Brothers in Arms,
In
right.
Israel, in the beginning, it was Brothers and Sisters in Arms, but it stayed Brothers in Arms. Now, I'm not active. They do very good work, first of all. They did a lot of things, and it's tremendous. But I was hearing all kinds of stories that also many women who were part of this activity didn't find themselves there, you know, so they went aside. So the good thing is what happened now in Israel. You see so many women initiating things from cooking in their kitchen to soldiers, establishing big operations to move food from here to there, clothes from here to there, doing a tremendous work. But if you lift your head upwards, and you look at our government, it's very sad, you know, and I'm not talking politics. I will not talk politics, but even there was just 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Treasury they were talking about the budget cuts because the Israeli budget, you know, the budget of Israel should have been, if you say budget of Israel, that's the word, had to be passed. Now, you have to do cuts, right, because the war is very expensive. Due to the fact that so many non-useful governmental offices were open, there is a big talk in the Israeli public, let's close some of these offices which are not needed, you know. And who in the end gave up the offices? Oh, the 3 women, you know. But all of the men are left in office. So it's the problem is, and this is a big question, and also for you as Elluminate, how do you help wonderful, tremendous women in Israel? First of all, being in civil society gives you power, okay, because you don't, but we also have to have, in the end, more women in politics. So this is the good side, but still we have to see that the women will also influence the big decisions, not only from outside the system, but also in the system, because even as rape crisis centers, we advocate for our local centers to get budget, yeah? They only get about 20%, 25% of the budget covered. But even that, even that it's hard to get. Because, and if there were more women who decide these kind of things, it would be easier because women immediately understand these things. So, as Illuminate, I think you're doing the right thing because nobody is doing it, by the way, and continue to find the very women who could make a change in Israel, and we will create a change. And as civil society is very strong in Israel, and they're really great women. None of us want to run to politics, right? But maybe some of them would want to run.
Right. Yeah. So Donna, please.
Could not agree more. So a few thoughts. First of all, I think that I'll say that, yes, civil society is very strong. Israeli society is a very resilient society.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 3 months, 1 out of every 2 Israelis has been volunteering. Right? 50% of the population has been out volunteering extensively. To me, that's amazing. And it's also a sign of resilience because volunteering gives you the opportunity to step up and do, right? You're stepping out of a passive, like you want to do something. That's what we all, right? Like that's how we step out of difficult situations is when we actually do something about it. A lot of those are women, right? There's also been, just a lot of initiative taking in society in a very Israeli kind of way, right? Like everyone has the next idea, doesn't look to the side to see if it's already done, but goes ahead and initiates something new. From my perspective, in terms of your question, I think a lot of it right now is in grassroots leadership, grassroots female leadership, and I actually want to tell you a story, again, to make it real. So October 7th, after I figured out that our fellows are okay, one of my next texts was to my friend Yahaloma. Yahaloma lives in the same town of Ofakim that I told you about before. And she's a good friend. I've known her for several years now, and I wanted to know how she's doing. And I wrote to her, and she said, I can't talk. There's terrorists around. So I said, okay, stay safe. Wrote her again, 1 p.m. She writes, I can't talk to you. We have to be quiet. There's terrorists in the town. Wrote her again at 7 p.m. the whole day, right? Yahaloma was in her safe room the whole day. And she was fine. And, Yahaloma is one of those grassroots amazing leaders. She's a survivor of a terrorist attack herself. She started what is now called resiliency centers. So she started a resiliency center in Ofakim many, many years ago. The idea being that resilience is something that you build. It's not something you're born with, and you can really work on your resilience. And there's many, many pieces to resilience. A lot of it also has to do with your resources and your community and who you can rely on. Yahaloma started working 24/7, right, the end of the October 8th, going and talking to people, going into their homes. I went with her to some of these homes, people whose kids were at the Nova Festival or who were in that street where all of this happened. She was essentially their social worker, where the local government wasn't stepping in. She joined in with a wonderful Chabad rabbi, and they doubled, or I think more than that. They used to send 300 food packages a month. They were sending 700 food packages a week. So they started doing that. They just, she then got connected to Ben Gurion University and actually has gotten them to send mental health professionals to talk to people. Local government was not sending mental health professionals to talk to people who had terrorists in their homes. No one had come to listen to them or to speak to them. She's now set up this amazing yoga initiative because apparently for a lot of the women who've never done yoga before, so much of the stress sits in their body, and they've loved it. They've really enjoyed it. So it's like a small story of a woman in a small town in Israel who's doing these things that, that's what we need to support, the leadership. I agree with you. We also need to have more, not only white, generals, male generals in power, but I think it's really a lot of it is about supporting these women.
Thank you. Thank you for that story. So we assume, I was waiting, she was in her safe room for how long?
For like 24 hours.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow. So I know, I'm looking at the clock. I got it. I'm looking. Okay. As we surpass the 110-day mark of the hostages being held in captivity and the Hamas massacre, what do you expect? What do you feel? What are you sensing will happen moving forward? Is that an impossible question to answer, or are you able to get a sense of the direction and how things are going?
It's a complicated question because there are many levels. I think the Israeli society will not heal or even partially heal till there's a resolution with the hostages.
Mm-hmm.
But when the hostages will come back and when the war will finish, and it has to finish, there's a lot of things that we will have to take care of in the society. There's so many things. The war has a lot of many people suffer from the war. So many families have soldiers that are that return back, and even if nothing happened to them in their bodies, they saw a lot of things. I think, and that's what we say. Now, if I talk now about our work, I think thousands of people saw, heard, and are influenced by this horrible trauma. I deal with sexual violence, but it's not only that. Think about the hotels. Think about domestic violence in the rooms of the hotels. Think about, I don't know if you're aware that children are abused in these hotels, because I myself in the beginning volunteered in one of the hotels in Tel Aviv, and I saw what's going on there. It's a hotel is not a courtyard, a yard. A hotel is a hotel, and if you're very young children, where can they go? So, and there's always bad people around. So we'll have a lot to heal, and so I won't talk about the big politics, which is a big question mark. What will happen with our society? I want to say positive things, because you told us we have to come out with energy. Yeah. First of all, one of the things, and I'm here now, and it's something I have never felt before so strong. And as I told you before when we talked, I feel how history is repeating itself. But it's also good, we, all of the Jewish people around the world, understand one thing: whether we live in the States, Europe, or in Israel. This is, I never thought about living in Israel because my parents were immigrants, but we all know that Israel is important. And we all know that no matter politics, we have to fight for this country. And we are united with this cause. And I think it brought the Jewish community a lot more close to each other. This is very important. Second, what happened in Israel? I myself, I'm not embarrassed, went to demonstrate in Kaplan, against legal judicial reform. Yeah, I hope it's not passed yet, but now we forgot it for a minute. We're all united as Israelis, and we really help each other. We're helping each other. Luckily, my daughter is not she was in a combat unit, but not now. But my nephew is in Gaza right now, and Tanya's son just went out of Gaza. All of us are there. But we're united. So I think this unity is very, very important, and this is and we will have a lot of work to heal the community, each one with their organizations. And I hope, the only thing I hope that, I'm not counting a lot about the government, but I am counting, or hopefully, that people in Israel and around the world will help us to help other people. And one of the things, I'm sure you heard about it, that the judicial reform and all the demonstrations against it built the infrastructure that now helps society. Because Achim Laneshik again, Brothers in Arms, who were part of this thing, there's a lot of infrastructure for civil society to do good work. This is positive thing. The ones are one, but People are resilient. We passed so many wars. We, the Jewish, my father was a scientist, and he once said, the Jewish people that survived, all of us here, we survived our history. We have good genes, right? Because we're survivors. So we will continue with that, and what can we do? We suffer and we continue. So I think this is our.
I appreciate that, and I promise that we're going to end on a positive note for sure. Did you want to add to that as well, Donna? So, here we are, and before we open this up for questions for a few minutes, you have a room full of people who want to know that question, what can we do? We're here, and we're anxious and ready and willing. Tell us what to do, and we'll do it.
I'll say, first of all, from my point of view, and your young people to come and volunteer, or come yourselves, maybe not tomorrow, can be in, 3 weeks, can be in 6 months. Engage with us through action. I would also say, because not everyone has the time to come, and that's fine, I think connect and learn about the grassroots, and really, I think it's sometimes, I'm guessing, I haven't lived here for many years, but I'm guessing it's hard to know, right? Because there's so much going on. But actually through Elluminate, you have such an amazing network of activists, so many people doing incredible work. So I think it's a wonderful way to connect. And I will say the third thing, which is in some ways really, really simple, but from a personal point of view, I think to me it has been really important. Just reach out to people. If you know people in Israel, just reach out. And if you don't know what to say, just say thinking about you. You have no idea, for me personally, how much that has helped me, how much that is giving me strength, and how much the silence of some of the people I've been in touch with over the years has been loud and unpleasant. So I think that that's like such a small thing. And in connecting to what you said before, whether we want it or not, we are a mishpucha, right? Like we are. And I think that I think this has made that very, very clear. And so that's what you do, right? In a mishpucha, like, hey, how are you? Thinking about you. So yeah, there's some of my thoughts.
Thank you.
To add that, for example, Melanie and I and Rachel and many others, we met through all of the Zoom. But it's first of all to meet through Zoom. It's very good, and to talk to people. I think you came here tonight, and it's wonderful. And I think to get people to meet each other and talk, it's very important. Now we have Zoom, so you don't have to fly, or you can come to Israel, volunteer, or just come, or we can come here. But if not, this initiating all kinds of talks with different focuses is very important, and it enables people to connect emotionally, see people, continue to talk after privately. And the more you know, I think one of my purposes is that you will get information about what happened. So on Friday dinner, Shabbat dinner, when you talk with your friend, you can explain. It's very complex, but when it's afterwards your kids will return from school and somebody will tell them bad things, but you know the information. So I think it's also very important to know more details. Because the world now is not easy because of all of this denial. So what you're doing here is very, very important.
Well, thank you. And I know that when you said, that there is a sense of unity now, I know that so many people feel that. When you go to Shabbat services, you see more people than you saw before. People are drawn to that. Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. And literally a few minutes, so I'll keep it short. Yes, Barbara, please. Oh, okay.
So much for these inspiring stories. I mean, you really gave us a sense of what is happening there. And I'm just curious to know, after the war, do you see your organizations changing in the way they approach Israeli society? Now that you're working with refugees, which you hadn't done before, you're doing direct services, do you see it happening the way than it was 5 months ago?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's given us new populations to work with, new ways of thinking about what needs to be done. And I'll tell you something else. We've learned this during the corona, and we've learned it again. The only way really to run an organization is be pretty flexible and nimble and see what comes up. So this morning, someone asked me, "What's your 10-year plan?" And I thought to myself, "Are you kidding me?" I'm thinking about July. That's the farthest I'm thinking. So both definitely, new programs and new populations, but also this mindset of we have to answer needs, right? Like particularly when you work with volunteers, if you're doing real volunteer work and not just feel-good volunteer work, you need to understand what the needs are. You need to understand where it's appropriate for you to be and also where it's not appropriate for you to be. I had this meeting I told you before with Haifa municipality. It was about whether or not we should go and help in the hotels. And one of the things that we realized, it's not a place for us to be. It's right now too complicated, and there's need for skilled people, and in this moment in time, but maybe that will change in 3 months, right? I hope we won't have that need anymore, but really being attentive to what the needs are and figuring out what's the most sustainable and responsible way to answer those needs.
Things. One, Dana, your organization has been working with Israeli Palestinian citizens of Israel. Could you tell us a little bit about the challenges now, and will you be able to continue to have volunteers working with the Israeli citizens of Israel? And then for Orit, from what I have been hearing about the mental health is that the government has not been very helpful in terms of being able to provide the mental health services, and a lot of organizations are popping up to provide mental health services in the country. How they're working together and how you see it in terms of and we're going to have in terms of
the you have to decide which side you are so I can see. Sorry. You're asking a very right question. There is in Israel for many years already, not only now, a big problem with the situation of the mental health, because the Israeli Ministry of Health is not spending enough money on mental health. It's not a new thing. As an organization, we really advocated a lot to create mental health, which is trauma, sensitive to sexual trauma. Now, after the 7th of October, there's a big catastrophe. Everybody needs a therapist. Everybody, yeah. To work in the government, it's less money. This is one of the problems. The government pays very low salaries to therapists, social workers. Really, if you open a private clinic, you get more than double. So nobody wants. The good people don't want to work in that's one of the problems. As you said, there are many organizations, first of all, that deal with therapy. Also us, we sometimes, even my organization, we pay for 1 or 2 or 3 women for mental therapy, because otherwise they will collapse, and so, okay. And all of our rape crisis centers do the same, and we get sometimes people fund us to help victims, and we do that. But this is very particular. We do advocate for a big change in that, but one of the problems now, what is related to the 7th of October gets money. What is not related directly doesn't get money. But, not people who were traumatized before because other reasons, now there is a war. Now it's triggering their past mental health. So there's a big awareness to this issue, and I think it's like what you call money time for all of us organization. Like we are part of a coalition to in Israel, a new forum to initiate in Israel trauma-informed therapy. It was started 1 year ago by the Rekanati family, okay? They gave the money to start this coalition, and we're many organizations all together in this. So there's a few big organizations also like Natal, which is very famous, and others. We all deal with the same problems. There's a big scarcity now in therapists in Israel. My hope, I'm not sure it will happen, but my hope, because this trauma is so big and so many people are now, everybody, it's obvious that the government will not, in the end, will not only not cut the budget of mental health, but will put more money. There will be a lot of pressure on that. But, it's very hard in Israel to forecast anything. She's talking about half a year, but in the Israeli political situation, everything is very, very not secure. But there is a big awareness. Even you know this, you asked me. So we cooperate with each other, we help, and we try to fundraise for people, because people will, if a woman or a husband or a wife collapse, a family can collapse. So it's evident. There was, I have to share with you, I don't know if you heard about it, in the beginning of the war, the Israeli Ministry of Health said, we need volunteers to give mental health treatment. They were asking for therapists, to volunteer. Is that logical? Why should a therapist volunteer for the Ministry of Health? Then they stopped it because the public criticized them very, very strongly. But we will have to deal with that. That's amazing. But I used to work for many years in the Hebrew University. Hebrew University knows to work. It's a good university and a strong university, and it helps the students there. But if you live in Ofakim and you're a friend of Yahaloma, and you don't have any connection to people who can fundraise for you, and you're not a survivor of sexual assault, or just a regular person who has traumas, and you live in the periphery, who will help you? Nobody. So yeah, but I really, really hope something will change. I want to be optimistic, but it's a struggle in Israel. Everything is a struggle, and still the budget passed, and they still gave a lot of money to education of Haredi, and they didn't cut any money, but they cut money for. So yeah.
Question about working with Arab Israelis or Palestinian citizens of Israel. I'll tell you again 2 stories. One is, because it's complicated. I'll say, first of all, that as far as Yahel is concerned, where we worked, we will continue working. No one is going anywhere. Our Arab friends are not going anywhere. In Lod, in Haifa, we are working with the same organizations. It's unchanged. But 2 stories. Remember that family from Ofakim who we evacuated? We got them a driver. The young woman who I was talking to from the family, she calls me up frantically. She says the driver is Arab. We can't go. I said, we've worked with this company for years. He's a really nice guy. We know him. She was in trauma mode. She said, we can't hear Arabic. We can't do it. We don't want to go. Please get us someone else. And we said, okay, fine. And we got her another driver, and was a Jewish driver. That's not something that I would have done in the past, but I understand that there is this deep fear. There is so much fear right now that, like some of this separation is happening. That's on the one hand. At the same time, I live in Zichron Yaakov, not far from Haifa. This is not with my Yahel hat on, but I'm part of a community of Jews and Arabs from Zichron and from Faradis. And we have never been more active than the last 3 months. And I know that it's not like that everywhere, but we have had circles, we have done joint projects together. We have, with Yahel actually, we've done packing of Jews and Arabs who got together in Faradis to pack food packages for unrecognized Bedouin villages in the south and Ofakim. And we're doing another project on Monday in Jisr, if anyone wants to come. So this is also happening. Both of it is happening. I personally am very adamant to continue those relationships because the Arabs living within Israel are not going anywhere. This is our country, and we better make it, we better make it good for all the citizens that are living there. But I'm also very much aware that there's a lot of fear and that it's not easy.
I wish we had more time. We'll close, and there will be time for people to ask you questions afterwards. Before Melanie closes us out, I just want you to know we're just so appreciative, and we thank you so much for being here, for being the one who gives us information that, we spend our days on Instagram or reading the New York Times or something, and we always wonder what the truth is and where it lies. So we thank you so much for your continued work and for representing us so beautifully. So we thank you. So just a quick thank you for them.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Arid and Donna. There are no words. Thank you for being with us here. Just know we are with you in your hearts. And I just want to lift up a few things that they said that we need to be doing. We need to be educated. We need to be coming together in conversation. We need to be supporting women's equality, and we need to be supporting Jewish women's leaders at the grassroots. And that is what we're trying to build here. And we are trying to support the amazing women, just like Orit and Donna. It's been amazing just to listen to you, and I know it's just the beginning. I wanted to have a few announcements. I wanted to say, first of all, it's taken several months since October 7th, but we have really been thoughtful and intentional at Elluminate, and we're launching a Hanani initiative, which is our Israel emergency campaign to support Jewish women leaders already in our collective and those working for women's equality, which is what we've heard from all of our Israeli collective members is really the issue that they want us to support. So please consider helping us to find people who want to support that, and consider it yourself. There's information at your tables. Please come to our annual luncheon, where we also have our honorees who are the Israeli Women Collectives. We are honoring them this year, along with Ayla Morgan, who is on our executive committee and is a beautiful visionary philanthropist. So we hope you'll come, bring people to, I don't know if celebrate's the right word, but to thank you, stand with you, and so forth. And we also have a Crown Jewel conversation. That's our monthly webinar with a collective member each year and each month. And this month it's going to be Donna. So we have a lot more. It's on December 4th to have a one-on-one conversation with Donna and Rachel Weinstein. So